Hey guys, this is my review for The Great Gatsby. I've gotten a lot of requests to review this one. This is directed by the excessively gaudy Baz Luhrmann. And you're probably thinking that I am going to sit here and completely tear this movie a new one. And I am, to an extent, but my reaction was a little different than what you might have expected. Um, when I walked out of this movie, I was very torn. I came at it from two very different points of view. So that's how I've decided I'm going to review it. So this review is going to be a little bit more unconventional than usual and maybe a little bit longer. So if you get bored, just tune out or whatever. But I'm going to be reviewing this movie based on two points of view. Because there are two people that are going to go see this movie. The first one is going to be the type of people that love F. Scott Fitzgerald, the original novel, people that really hold it dearly to their hearts and really respect it, people who are curious to see how this movie is going to interpret the literature, or sorry, the prose style, the writing style into a visual medium. And this can be just fans of the book or literary scholars, critics, whatever. It's going to be those kinds of people. And then there are the other types of viewers who are the ones who walk in just as casual moviegoers, people who probably have never read The Great Gatsby and don't care. They just want to be entertained and be swept up by the escapism of it all. And yeah, so those kinds of people. People that might be fans of Moulin Rouge or Romeo and Juliet, other films that Baz Luhrmann has done. So I'm going to start off by talking as a fan of the book. My bachelor's degree in college is in English literature, and I actually graduate tomorrow, so congratulations to me. But anyway, different story. I have read this book quite a few times, and it is one of my all-time favorites. One of my all-time favorite pieces of American literature. I think it's just an incredible story. I completely get wrapped up in the ideologies and in the subtlety of it. I think I think a lot of people that are fans of the book, including myself, think that it's an unfilmable book. It can't be interpreted visually in the same way that it has an effect on the reader. Because when you read the book, it has a very conversational tone to it, almost passive, but then you realize later how profound and poignant it is. But to me, the book is all about subtlety, and the characters are very rich, and the themes are very rich. And with the movie, that is not the case. One of my favorite quotes in the entire book is, I can't remember exactly what it is verbatim, but it's, what a grotesque thing a rose is. Nick Carraway has the line, I believe. Anyway, so the point of that line is that, things are not as glamorous as we think they are. We have this whole idea of the American dream and of idealism, but really nothing is what we think it is in real life. And it's a hard thing for people to accept. And I think that the movie got the rose part, but it completely missed out on the grotesque aspect of it. This movie is just, it's extravagant eye candy, basically. I mean, it's infused with this pop music and rap music, and it's got these nauseatingly bright colors. And instead of understanding the perceptiveness of the prose and of the novel itself, it just pretty much strips it down, and it pretty much dumbs it down, and it goes for pure theatricality. And the characters in the movie, to me, were not nearly as interesting as they were in the book. You've got interesting characters still, but they've become so melodramatic and so simplified that I didn't really get into them as I did when I was reading the book. But let's take, for instance, Gatsby's entrance in the movie. So, they're building him up and talking about him. There's all this gossip about who he is and who he may not be. And then when he comes on screen, it's just the music crescendos. It's Rhapsody in Blue, the music. And there's fireworks in the background, and Nick Carraway's like, oh my God, it's Gatsby. And I was just laughing because that is not what it's meant to be. When you read the book, Nick Carraway doesn't even realize he's talking to Gatsby. And it's the same way in the movie, but when he actually reveals that he's Gatsby in the novel, Nick is kind of like, oh, wow, because he expected him to be this huge, charismatic guy, and in a way he is, but he's also just a guy, a very interesting guy, but he's he's very masked by all the party and the extravagance and you don't really realize that he's just a guy. And I think the movie completely missed out on it. It took all the visual splendor and spectacle, and it didn't understand the dimension of the story. I mean, it kind of did, but on a very sophomoric level. So anyway, yes, as a person who loves the book and as a literary fan, I was tearing this movie apart. I really was the whole time. But that being said, all that being said, I didn't hate it. And in a bizarre, sort of twisted way, I actually was kind of enjoying myself. And I feel ashamed of saying that, really. I mean, because I was one of those people walking into this movie and I did not have high expectations. So you're probably shocked that I didn't hate it. I'm kind of shocked that I didn't hate it. But that brings me to the second portion of this review, which is, the casual moviegoer, the type of people who are checking their literary critic self at the door, and that would be myself. There are things about this movie that are kind of admirable, in a guilty pleasure sort of way. I was fascinated by the superficiality of it, the overacting, it was like a soap opera. It was so melodramatic, and there's so much going on in the movie that you are never bored. I promise you, whether you hate this movie or you love it, you are never going to be bored, because again, it's just there's so much going on visually, and it's like a trip. It really is. And so on that aspect, I found it kind of entertaining in an escapist sort of way. The characters, they're more interesting than most of Baz Luhrmann films. My problem with Baz Luhrmann is, because I've never liked any of his movies. I hate Moulin Rouge, and I don't like Romeo and Juliet that much, but I think he's a style over substance guy. And as I mentioned before, yes, this movie is style over substance. But here, I think the characters are interesting enough, and he's got enough of a handle on them to make them at least intriguing and enjoyable, again, on a very sophomoric level. But, the story is interesting and it still engages you no matter how dramatic and over the top it is. But again, it kept my interest, even though they were simplified. But as I was watching the movie, I was kind of embarrassed. I'm sitting there going, God, I'm kind of entertained by this movie, and what's wrong with me? But I think that I definitely went through the gambit of emotions when I watched this movie. There were times where I was laughing, and I was smiling and laughing, sometimes intentionally and sometimes unintentionally, because some of the acting is very laughable. And there were times where I was just taken aback by just the beauty of it, and kind of mesmerized by the superficial but beautiful quality of the movie. And, there were other times where I was completely rolling my eyes thinking, this is ridiculous. This is nothing like the F. Scott Fitzgerald Great Gatsby that I know. So I definitely had all kinds of different emotions. But when it comes down to it, again, I am very torn. If you are looking for F. Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby, you are not going to get it. This is definitely Baz Luhrmann's Great Gatsby. And if you really love the book and you don't want to see it tampered with in any way, you're not going to like this movie. And if you don't like Baz Luhrmann, you're not going to like this movie. But if you kind of are able to set aside the novel and enjoy it just out of sheer fun and the sheer exuberance of it, you might find yourself having a good time, because I think I kind of did. And again, I was a bit ashamed, but when I think of guilty pleasures, this movie is a guilty pleasure in the purest sense of the word. I mean, from now on, when I think of guilty pleasures, this movie is going to be, in flashing lights in my head, because that's what it is. You might be ashamed of liking it, but you kind of can't help yourself. So anyway, that's my kind of weird review for it, because again, I had very mixed reaction. Part of me didn't like it and had a lot of problems with it, and the other part of me just was able to let go and have fun. So I hope that was helpful, and thank you all for listening. If you would like, you can comment and tell me what you think of the movie. Also, you can follow me on Twitter. The link is below, and thanks for listening.